Amazing, incredible woman. When her story hit the news, right away, right when we saw this, we're like, we have to get this woman. This is what this event is about. This event is about women and their power. This event is about Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka and how she did everything she could despite, she was not because she had any limitations, but because she was a woman. This next speaker is a perfect example of a woman who did everything the way she needed to, even better than a lot of people I know, and yet she reached heights that I don't know many people who did reach this. So she seems like she's an ordinary woman, but actually she's an extraordinary woman. She's a mother of 6 and a grandmother, and she is the first criminal judge to the United States that's a female Hasidic woman. So everyone, I would like to represent Judge Rachel Freier.
So good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me? Can you all see me? That's usually the harder part. Not always can everybody see me. Well, anyhow, I really am so glad to be here. And, you know, like the speaker before me just said, that you're here because of Rebbetzin Mushka Shalom and what she represented. And, you know, I'll take it even a step further. I've gone around speaking to many different Chabad shuls. And I have been so impressed by what I've learned about you Chabad women. You really embody truly what an Eshes Chayil is. You're amazing in your approach to Yiddishkeit, in your approach to your connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be here to celebrate the Rebbetzins Yahrzeit. So the reason why I'm here, and I think the big question is, how did a Beis Yaakov girl from Borough Park, who married a Baba Chassid, end up doing arraignments in Brooklyn criminal court? And that is a very big question that sometimes even makes me stop to think, but I'm going to share it with you. But before I start, let me first thank the Holzberg family for welcoming me here, and let me thank all you ladies for being here. So, first of all, I want to also give an explanation of why I went public, why I accept invitations, and why I go public, and why I speak about and share my story. And what I've learned a long time ago is that Hasidim usually don't get good PR. If you open up the papers and it's about Hasidim, it's usually about somebody getting arrested or someone doing something not good, some landlord someplace. But the true essence of us Hasidim doesn't get into the papers. So I've always tried in my philosophy, show them the good, show the press the good, show the media the good, so that when something negative happens, at least they'll know the good about us. So that's something to keep in the back of your minds. Bounds, different parents, different upbringings, some of us come from different countries, and we have many differences. But what I think you'll realize by the time I finish my presentation is that we have more similarities than differences. We have more that binds us than what actually separates us. And as I share my story, I always want to explain to my listeners that I'm going to share my story based on my background, my upbringing, and my standards. And my standards as a Beis Yaakov girl from Borough Park are different than the standards of girls in different communities. And I'm not here to tell anybody that you have to accept my standards, because my standards are different than my cousins in Williamsburg, and their standards are different than my other cousins in Monroe. So we all have different standards. But what I want you to walk away with tonight is that whatever your standards are, keep them. Hold them. They're precious. Don't let go, and don't think for 1 second that you have to let go to be successful in the secular world, because it's not true. And I'll prove it with my story. Now, it's very hard because I usually have around 30 minutes to share my story of 30 years. My story is not like an instant coffee success story. It's a journey. It's a journey that I've been on for the past 30 years, and I still haven't reached my destination yet, ladies. I still want to accomplish more. I'm just on my journey, but I'll share it with you. So I grew up in a very simple home. My parents weren't rich. They're still not rich. My father wasn't famous. He's not a politician. He's not a millionaire. I grew up in a very simple home. My parents were very hardworking people and still are. They never pushed us. My mother was too busy. It was never important for her that I should be the best in the class, the top student, as long as we behaved. My mother taught us. We were girls growing up. I had 3 sisters. My brother was born after I got married. My mother always said, girls, you could do anything you want in life, so long as it isn't illegal, immoral, or against the Torah. So I grew up thinking to myself, I could do a lot. I have a lot out there open to me. My mother always taught us, be proud that you were born in this great country. My grandparents were survivors of the Holocaust. But girls, the world is open to you. And my father, he believed that we were the best. We were the greatest. But the most important thing to him was derech eretz. We had to behave. When he came to school, he wouldn't even ask the teachers what marks we got. How did my daughter behave? That was most important. My father believed that we were so great. I remember one day he called me up when I was already a lawyer. Ruchi, I was in Manhattan, and I saw a magazine for sale, the top 50 lawyers in America. And I bought the magazine, Ruchi, but I didn't see your name in it. I said, I'm not in those kind of magazines. But he believed that we were great. In a nutshell, I graduated 8th grade in 78. I graduated high school in 82. Beis Yaakov Elementary School, Beis Yaakov High School. I went to Beis Yaakov Seminary. Then I went to the Beis Yaakov Tour of Israel the following year. I was 6 weeks in Israel. And then I came back and I got a job as a legal secretary and back in the time when I went to school, there was no college opportunity for a from Hasidish Haredi girl from Beis Yaakov to go to college. It didn't exist. And I never wanted to be a rebel. I wasn't going to break away and do something that wasn't accepted in my community. So I took a course in school to be a legal secretary, and I was doing great. A maskila for Orchei Din. It was wonderful. Now, when I grew up in the 1970s and the 1980s, it was a different generation than it is today. In those years, kids weren't pushed. Do you know what I mean? We were great because we were born. My grandfather, my Zaidi, used to call me the first one. I was the first grandchild of Holocaust survivors. We proved that Hitler was wrong. We proved Am Yisrael Chai V'Kayam, where no one's going to ever destroy us. So all we had to do was go to school and breathe. Inhale oxygen, exhale carbon dioxide, and we were great. It didn't make a difference. So anyone sitting here who thinks that I became a lawyer because I was pushed by my parents and my teachers, wrong. No one ever pushed me. But I felt that they believed in us. They believed that we had potential. So again, the main theme of my speech tonight, everybody, is standards. We all have standards. Don't compromise them. And when I go to speak to girls in high school, I tell them, girls, when you're going to go out of the school, you're going to have a lot of challenges. And you're going to be made to feel that you have to let go. But don't, because when you keep to your standards, the message that you're giving to the other person is that even when no one sees, you are dedicated, loyal, honest, have integrity, and you can be trusted. So if the company has a corporate secret, who will they trust? Now let me share with you a little bit of what happened when I tried to keep my standards. Okay? So I tried to daven 3 times a day. I go to Miron on Lag BaOmer and Lezhensk for Rabbi Elimelech's yortzeit and Kerestia for Rabbi Shaila's yortzeit. I believe that tefillah is very important, and it really, really helped me. But a little bit later in my speech, I'll tell you my mincha story. You see, when I speak, I jump back and forth. So you really have to pay attention, because some things I'll tell you in the order of my age, what happened when I was little, I got older, and some I'm just going to jump back and forth about different topics. So we'll come back to my mincha story. But, you know, in Borough Park, men and women don't shake hands. It's one of those things that we don't do. Now, I know that many people who are very religious do. So I called up the rabbi when I was just finishing law school, and I asked him this shaila. And he said, you know, for me, under my conditions, it would be okay if I shook hands with the men, especially if I'm going to embarrass him. Then I started to think to myself, I have to think, he's embarrassed. He won't be embarrassed. He will be. He won't be. No, forget it. It's not going to work. I'm Ruchi Freier. I'm going to stick to my standards. I don't shake hands with men. And if someone doesn't want to use me as a lawyer, well, there's the door. It's okay with me. I remember when I had a closing. So, by the way, everybody, my background was doing real estate work. And I ran for civil court. And it was only 2 weeks before my term started that I was told that I'm going to be doing criminal court. So, you really have to believe Hashem runs the world, because otherwise you could never get through the day. Not at all. So I was doing a real estate closing, and my husband, who does mortgages, was the mortgage broker, and he's a chassid. And my clients were chassidim, very obvious chassidim. And we were sitting around the closing room, and the bank attorney, who was an Irish Catholic, comes in. But he knew me, he knew my husband, he knew my clients, he knew for sure that I was chassidish. So he comes to the closing table, and he starts shaking hands with everybody. And he comes to me, and he stretches out his hand. And I said, Steve, you know I can't do that. He gives me a big hug. Oh, Ruchi, I'm so sorry, I forgot. Let me tell you, if there was a hole on the ground, I would go right under. And that's the story that I'll always repeat if somebody gets a little bit uncomfortable if I don't want to shake their hands. And then there's the concept of nivel peh. Where we grew up in Borough Park, people don't curse. Now, when you work in law offices, very often you're going to hear them say these things. So I was doing an internship one year, and the lawyers had a habit of saying words that I wanted to close my ears every time they would say it. So one day I got up and I said, Ad Khan, this is too much. I walked to the lawyer's office and I said, excuse me, Arnold, please forgive me, but can I ask you a favor? I said, you know, I sit right outside your office, and sometimes the words that you use, it really bothers me. Can I ask you a favor that when I come in during my lunch hours, because I only had an internship during the lunch hour, when I come in, could you please watch the way you speak? Rachel, I'm so sorry, for sure, no problem. So then every time I would come into the office, here she comes, everybody, watch your language now. But it was okay, I didn't mind if they made fun. But one day I decided, you know what, I have to give them an incentive. So I brought in a tzedakah box, a Meya Bal Hanes tzedakah box, put it on my desk, and I said, guys, anytime somebody curses, you got to put a quarter in the tzedakah box. One guy takes out of his pocket $10. Rachel hears in advance. But it's okay. It was okay. I think Ad Hayom Hazeh, that tzedakah box is still on the desk. And then I remembered when I went to law school. So the way I dress in Borough Park is the way I dress wherever I go. My husband and I love to travel. We go on vacations. But my wardrobe is my wardrobe. Wherever I go, that's who I am. I remember the librarian in Brooklyn Law School said to me, you know, Rachel, you're the best dressed law student I've seen. And I had to think to myself, it's probably only because I'm always careful of my tznius standards that I probably stood out in her eyes. And then I remembered when I worked at Wilkie, Freier and Gallagher. That's a very big corporate law firm in Manhattan. Now, I don't know if anybody ever worked in these big law firms, but Friday, in the summertime, they have dress down day. Do you know what dress down day is? They want to make the lawyers feel like they're not working so hard. So you don't have to come in a suit and a tie, come in a casual clothing, and you're going to feel like you're on vacation. Now, I always had a problem because I like to dress up. I don't like to dress down. But it was Friday, and I had to come to work with something. Now, I had this denim dress, and I knew that for my standards, the sleeves were borderline. It was just. But I wore the dress anyway. And I'm going to work, and I sat at my desk, And one of my bosses, a young associate lawyer, he's not religious, comes to me and he says, Rachel, I see your forearms. And I want to tell you, it was so powerful what he told me, because the message that he said to me was really, I know that I can't see that part of your arm, and I'm sure that you don't know that your sleeves are too short. So I don't want to see it. I want you to know, not one teacher in Beis Yaakov could have ever said to me something that had such an impact. Well, guess what I did? I went home and I threw out that dress. So, we all have challenges. We all have nisyonot. Some of us have it in places where we don't want to share it. But all I will tell you is, if you fall, just get up. Because that's the purpose of being a human being. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create us as malachim. We're human beings. We're basar v'dam. You are going to fall. Get up and keep on going. Don't let it get you down. Now, my challenges came when I worked in offices that were closer to where I was. What do I mean? When I worked with people who were totally secular, I had a line that I drew, right? There was a black line, and everyone knew you don't go over this line. But when I worked with people who were closer to me, as religious as I was, then it was very unclear. That black line became gray. Now, my teachers in Beis Yaakov taught me, they said to us, girls, you're going to see that when you come across something that's not right, first it's going to bother you. Then you're going to get used to it. And the next madrega is you're going to like it. Well, I was working in an office where I felt something wasn't right. I just couldn't put my finger on it, but I felt as a Beis Yaakov girl, I should know that this is not the right place. The hours were so good. The pay was so good. Everyone was so nice. I just couldn't just leave. But I had doubts in my mind. Well, that year, my husband was going to Miron for Lag BaOmer. He didn't go every year. But that year, I said to him, Sidovid, this year, I'm going with you. Because I have to daven. I have to go to Miron. I have to daven. I need a sign from God. Do I stay in this job or do I go? So we went. Now, if you remember, anyone who's a little bit like my age group, years ago, before cell phones, when you went away on vacation, you had an answering machine. And you put it on, and you went away. And when you came home, you listened to your messages. So I was in Miron, davening, Hashem, please send me a message. Should I stay? Should I go? Let me know. Bichonin das. Let me know if I should stay or go. I come home from vacation, and my husband goes down to the answering machine. Ruchi, you have a message. Hi, Rachel. It's Irene from the employment agency. Are you still looking for a part-time job? I have a great opportunity in the city, etc., etc. I figured, if that's not a message from God, I will never get a message again in my life. I figured I'll go for the interview, I won't get the job, and that means I have to stay. Well, that firm was a big firm in the city, and that firm had a program with a large firm in Tel Aviv, where they would exchange young lawyers every year. And it was a very good rainmaker for both firms. That means both firms made money from this. So that year, the daughter of Yaakov Naaman was coming to work in this firm, and she's a religious woman. So they were looking for a secretary who was religious and who speaks Hebrew. So I went for the interview. They asked me, you speak Hebrew? You read Hebrew? Now, I don't speak Ivrit really fluently, but I read the Siddur. So I said, sure, I read Hebrew. You got the job. Now I said, okay, this is the message that God sent me. I want you to know, until today, I go to Miron every year because of that story. And every year I visit Yaeli. She and I are really good friends. So if you pray to God, you just never know. He will just send you a message. Now, I considered myself very, very lucky because I had great teachers in Beis Yaakov. They answered all my questions. I was a girl that always had questions. In fact, if one of my friends wanted to waste time, Ruchi, ask a question. Just ask a question. And I always had a question to ask. But by the time I graduated, I had all the answers. I knew who I was. I knew what was expected of me. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. Now, as I got more advanced in what I'm doing, people would sometimes tell me, Ruchi, is what you're doing right? Is it really b'derech tzniut what you're doing? You're so public, everyone knows about you. And deep in my heart, I felt that I was doing the right thing because I felt that I had such siyata d'shmaya. But I was wondering, do I have a role model? How do you say a role model in Ifrit? So, I didn't know if I didn't really have a role model. Now, one summer I was traveling in California, and I stayed there by a lovely family, and they had this book in the room about Sarah Shanira, about her life. And it was called Carry Me in Your Heart by Pearl Benish, one of her students who just passed away. Now, I went to Beis Yaakov, and we learned about Sarah Shanira because she started the Beis Yaakov movement. We learned about the mother of Beis Yaakov, how she was a seamstress in Krakow in Poland. But we didn't learn that she was controversial. We didn't learn that there were people who were against her. We didn't learn that. Maybe I was absent that day, I don't know, but we didn't learn this in school. We just learned that she was the mother of Beis Yaakov and she started the Beis Yaakov movement, and everyone knows how important it is for girls to go to school. Who knew that there was a machloket, that it was controversial? Now, in her book, one of the lessons that she taught her Talmidot is what I carry in my heart. She said, girls, she tells her Talmidot, a Jewish daughter has to always wear a dress with 2 pockets. And I always happen to be wearing the dress with 2 pockets when I repeat the story. In one pocket, you carry the pasuk, Kol kvuda bat melech pnima. Your modesty, your tzniut, that's your badge of pride. That's what shows who you are. Carried in your heart with your head up high. But in your other pocket, you carry the other pasuk of Tehillim, Et lasod la Hashem heferu toratecha. Girls, there will come a time when you will see people are doing things that are wrong. They have trampled Torah values. You get up, you be leaders, and people will follow you. And she trained her girls to become teachers in all the different shtetls in Europe. And that's how she started her school. So if anybody ever asks me, where do I think I have the right to take a stand and do what's right? It's from Sarah Shanira. Now, I like to say I have a profession, not a career. You know, when someone says they have a career, it sounds like the children and the home are on the back burner. By me, my family always came first. And that's what took me so many years. Because by the time I decided to go to college, I wasn't going to compromise any of the values that are so important for me. So I wanted to always make sure that my children are part of my life. When I was in school, every child came to class with me. College, law school. When I worked, every child had a chance to come to the office with me. I was recently interviewed by Yemima Mizrahi, Rabbi Yemima Mizrahi, for her radio program. She calls me up one day, Ruchi, I do a weekly radio program in Israel on the Parsha, and this week is Parshat Shoftim. I want to interview you. I said, wow, Rebbe, and there's so many judges that are Jewish in the world, and you picked me. I'm honored. I'd love to do it. What time is it? I think they do it 9 o'clock at night, Thursday, right? But in New York, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon with them. I said, I have to see if I can get permission to leave because I sit on the bench in court at that hour. I asked my supervisor, he said, sure, no problem. Well, it was supposed to be a 10-minute interview, ended up being like 35 minutes because it took 10 minutes to get through all the technology problems that we had. But I get on the radio with her. She asked me, Ruchi, you're in criminal court, aren't you? And I said, yes, Rabbi, I'm in criminal court. How do you manage to listen all day to all these terrible cases, murders and crimes and robberies, and then how do you go home and leave it in court? And I thought for a second, I said, Rebbetzin, it's the other way around. I don't bring the court home with me. I bring my home with me to the court. It's the Bina Yisera that we have. It's the Chachmat Nashim that we have. The values that I have from my home, that's what I bring with me when I go to work every day. So when my husband decided to go to college, it was when we had already 3 children. I tell you, I said I have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. I would say like the Brady Bunch, but 1 husband. So when my 3rd son was born, my husband was still in Kollel. And he says, Ruchi, I'm going to try to see if I could make some money so you shouldn't have to support the whole family by yourself. And he opened up the Jewish press. He realized all he can do to make money is be a Rebbe or be a day camp counselor. You know what? I'm going to go to college. So he went to Touro College, and at that point, the colleges for the Hasidim and the Haredim opened up, and it was now possible. When he graduated, all of a sudden I sat at his graduation and I said, now it's my turn. Now it's my turn. I couldn't deny it anymore. It became just too real for me. And I told my husband, Sidovet, I think I want to go to college now. And my husband, the truth is, my husband really is the real hero. People make a big deal about me being the first Hasidic woman to win public office. While it may be a big deal, I think the bigger deal is that my husband is the first Hasid who encouraged his wife to run for public office, supported me, financed my campaign, and didn't stop going and getting me endorsements until I won. So he's really the big hero. Now, what I realized as I was going through my journey is that there was such hashgacha pratit that was in front of me every day that I actually became frummer. I felt Hashem is so close to me, I couldn't deny it. So as I was getting higher in my professional path, I was also becoming stronger in my emunah. And I had the chance to do some kiruv. 2 lawyers today are religious because they met me during those years. One sat next to me in law school, and one is my husband's cousin. But let me tell you about what I did in law school. So I used to do kiruv events. What did I do? It was before any of the chagim. I would set up a stand in the student lounge. If it was before Pesach, I made a seder. I bought a white tablecloth and matzot and yayin, and I made the whole spiel. It was before Hanukkah, I made latkes, and my son came and played the keyboard. So every time it was a yontif, I made yontif in law school. So it was almost before graduation, and I wanted to thank the security guards because every time I made a party, they always helped me, opening up the back door, schlepping the boxes. So they had these 2 African-American security guards, and I go to them and I said, you know, Clyde, I can't believe it. 4 years, I'm graduating. 4 years went by so quickly. I'm going to miss you guys. You always help me. Yeah, Rachel, we're going to miss you too with your little book. Now, what's the story? Let me tell you what happened. When I started law school, I was looking for a place to daven mincha. Now, I'm not embarrassed to daven. If I daven on the airplane, and today I just flew back from Miami, I'll daven on an airplane, I'll daven on a bus, wherever I am, I'm going to daven. I don't care who's watching me. But when I started law school, I was thinking to myself, what am I going to stand mincha? Mincha is the hardest tefillah because Shachris you daven in the morning, Ma'ariv you daven at night. But mincha, which you have to daven before the sun sets, you never know where you're going to be that day. So I could stand in the law school library and I could daven Shmona Esrei like this, but people might look at me and I might get embarrassed or self-conscious. Not embarrassed, but like self-conscious. So I spoke to one of the religious girls who was graduating and I said to her, where can I daven mincha? And she said to me, there's a staircase behind the cafeteria that nobody ever uses, and that's a good place to daven. So for 4 years I davened mincha there because nobody was able to see me because it was behind the staircase behind the cafeteria. So I was talking to Clyde, the security guard, telling him I'm going to miss him and thanking him for helping me for all these years when I was doing my kiruv events. And he tells me, yeah, we're going to miss you, Rachel, with your little book. I said, my little book? The law school books are so heavy, they weigh more than me. What are you talking about? So he points to the security cameras. We used to watch you pray every day with your little book. I didn't realize that in that staircase where I davened, it was a fire exit. and the security camera faced me every single day. So you never know when you are doing something and you think nobody is watching you. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamed. You always keep Hashem before you because you never know when you can impress somebody else. You know, I always say, I have the best job. I love my job. I have the best seat in the house. Because here in America, where the judges sit, above the judge is the words, "In God we trust." So every day when I come to work and I sit on the bench, it reminds me who I am and who I believe. Ani ma'amin, right? In God we trust. So people ask me often, they say, Ruchi, how did it affect your family? You went to school when your kids were little. You ran for public office. How did it affect your kids? So when my 3 sons were around 8, 10, and 12, I was going through law school then. Now I always taught my kids, you don't do what's not right. If something is right, you do it and you don't have to hide it. And if something is not right, you just don't do it. So I didn't tell them, don't tell your friends mommy's in college, or don't tell your friends mommy's going to law school, because if it's wrong, I'm not doing it. And if it's right, anyone could know about it. My son, Maishalai, my oldest one, comes home one day from yeshiva, from Chayda. Now, if I say anything in Yiddish, I'll translate it into English. Anybody here at all speak Yiddish? Well, Hasidim speak Yiddish primarily. So I'll say it in Yiddish, then I'll translate it into English, and then please translate into Hebrew for me. So I can speak Russian too. So my son, Maishalai, comes home from yeshiva one day. He says, Mommy, the boys in Chayda chatted with me. The boys in school were teasing me. What did they say? They came with the Borough Park phone book and they said, There's lawyer in Borough Park. There's not one woman lawyer in Borough Park. Was tit dan mama? What's your mother doing? I said, oh, Mashallah, that's very serious. What did you say? I said, "Says nicht man mama. It's not my mother." I said, okay, Mashallah, that's a way to handle it. That's a good way to handle it. And I turned to my second son, Shlomi, who was around 10. I said, Tatala, tell me, do any of the boys chapel with you in yeshiva? Do they tease you? He says, Ich mach mich nicht zu team. My son Shlomi, till ad hayom hazeh, very sincere, very religious. He just learns all day in the kollel, and he davens. He says, I just daven and learn a whole day, mommy. I don't even pay attention to them. So, Shlomi, that's a good policy. And then I went to my third son, Mailach, and I said, Mailach, Tatla, tell me, what do you do if the boys chapel you? Now, Mailach, even today, till today, has this gorgeous big blue eyes, and he has these blonde payas like gold. I even bought his wedding album to show you what he looks like. He was this cutest bouncing 8-year-old boy, and I said, Mailach, what do you do if the boys chapel you in yeshiva? Me? I tell them, I'm very proud. I have a little mother that does big things. Well, let me tell you, by the time I ran for judge, you should have seen how my boys grew up and how they turned around full circle, how they were so proud of me. They were my biggest campaigners. You had to see Borough Park. Borough Park rocked. If we have time later, I'll play for you the Yiddish campaign song. They did everything. They took all my information. They took my palm cards and they translated into Yiddish. They were standing on the streets on primary day. Vote for Freier, says my mama. And you should have seen these boys with the long payas and the black hats and the long black coats. Borough Park never had this before ever in history. You should have seen my husband. When I ran for public office, it was my dream to be a judge. When I graduated law school, when I started college, I was 30. And you all do the math. You'll all figure out how old I am. So when I started college, I was 30, and I was going to do it very slowly. It took me 6 years to get my undergraduate degree. And I knew that it's going to take me 4 years to do law school part-time. I remember I was sitting down with my friends, and I told them, it's going to take me 10 years to be a lawyer. And they all laughed. 10 years? We were all 3 then. Ruchi, we're going to be 40 then. Well, guess what happened 10 years later? We all turned 40, and I was a lawyer. And at that time, my uncle had been a judge. And I said, oh, I'd love to be a judge one day. And then when he retired, he said to me, Ruchi, if you still want to be a judge, run for my original seat. It doesn't mean that he gave me the job. He just gave me the idea. And I had to run. And I ran around to all the politicians, and they all said to me, we like you, but we can't support you. And I had to go to the head of the Democratic Party, and I said to him, can you endorse me? And he said, Rachel, you know, I really like you, but I was told that a Hasidic woman can never win in Borough Park. I looked him straight in the face and I said to him, if God wants me to win, I'm going to win. I had 2 opponents running against me. One was a man who was Haredi, because they got someone who's Haredi to win, with a beard and a hat. And then a woman who was not religious at all, because they figured she's going to get the women's vote and she's going to win. It was a 3-way race. And some people said, well, maybe Ruchi Freier will get the women's vote, but she's never going to get the men. Now, they didn't think about my boys. You should have seen what my boys did. It was like color war. They had their friends in my dining room. They sat down there, and they were all busy with the flies. Mommy, we're going to put this in all the shuls in Borough Park. Satma, bells, clothes, they did a list, like a war list, like a strategy. And Mommy, we're going to put it where the men read, in the bathrooms. So I was running around campaigning where men couldn't go. Ladies go in the swimming pool. I would say, please sign for me. Just don't make it wet. I got ladies out of the swimming pool to go and sign for me. Because I didn't get the party's endorsement, I had to get on the ballot. So we had to get thousands of signatures. The first day of the petitioning process, my husband came home. He davened Shachris in Babov, and he came home, Ruchi, I have 40 signatures. I said to David, 40 signatures from one Shachris? I think I have a good chance of winning. And I did win. But let me tell you about my deal with God. When I started law school, I was a little nervous. In fact, I was very nervous. It was the first time that I was going outside of my Arba Kanfot, outside of what I was always accustomed to. I was accustomed to being a maskira, a secretary in not religious offices. I was accustomed to many different things, but now I was going to a school, not like Touro College where I went for college. I was going to a totally non-Jewish environment, which is very liberal, and I wanted to stick to my standards. So I made my deal with God. I said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, help me get through law school without compromising my standards. And when your children come to me for help, I'll help them. Well, guess what? God wasted no time in testing me. Right after I graduated, some women came to me about their children that were doing drugs and weren't religious anymore. And they were having problems because they were kicked out of yeshivot. And my heart broke for these boys, and I started to talk to them. And I formed an organization to help them. And then a few years later, came another phone call. Hi, Ruchi, my name is so-and-so. We're EMTs, and we're doulas, and we wanted to join Hatzalah, but Hatzalah won't take in any women. Can you please help us? So I went to meet these women. And I said, if these women are these like feminist women, I'm not going to be busy with them because I have enough on my plate right now. But I met these women, really, really sincerely religious, very frum, buttoned up shirts, and school principals. What's going on here? They told me their story, that when Hatzalah started in the late 1970s, 300 women were trained to be part of the organization, which is a great organization, to help women in emergencies, and mostly for emergency Leida. And then they were kicked out and they were told to leave. And they asked me to help them. And ad hayom hazeh, I'm still busy trying to help them. But my opponents who didn't like me, you know what they called me? They called me a radical Hasidic feminist. And when the newspapers heard that, they all came running to interview me. And I said, I'm not a radical feminist. I said, where I come from in Bar Park, feminist is a bad word. It means a woman who wants a man's job. I don't want to wear a talit. I don't need an aliyah, but for the Torah. I'm very happy lighting the nerot for Shabbat, and I bake the challah. I love having my babies. I love being a Jewish woman. I don't need to be a man. I said, it's not about women's rights. Just most of the time, women are right. That's it. And you know what I learned? There's an expression in Yiddish, and I'll translate it. Was me tit fayene, tit me fazir. When you think you're doing someone a favor, you're really helping yourself. So I get appointed to criminal court. Now let me tell you something. I grew up without watching television. I grew up without watching movies. And here I find out 2 weeks before I start that I'm going to be doing arraignments in criminal court. Now, I want to tell you something. My experience working with the boys in my organization taught me why people do bad things, why these boys are doing criminal activities, why they're doing drugs. And it's no different when I have the defendants in front of me in court. Now, when I started Ezrat Nashim, which is the women's EMT group, I became trained. First, I became an EMT, and then I became a paramedic. Now, what I learned in my medical training, I understand now when people get hurt, the victims, and they're injured, and the district attorney says, Your Honor, the injuries of the victim are da-da-da-da, broken this and broken that, and lacerations. Your Honor, they say, we have pictures. I'm sure Your Honor doesn't want to see them. And I'll say, hand it right up. I want to see those injuries because I know exactly what it's all about. So here I thought that I was keeping my deal with God and I was helping the kids that came to me for help, but really I ended up helping myself so that when I'm doing arraignments on criminal court, I understand the defendants who are arrested for crimes and I understand the victims who are hurt by them. So what's my advice to everybody sitting here? Be proud of who you are. Be proud of the potential that you have. Understand that you have the ability of going out, impressing other people with what you do, and making Hashem proud. If you need someone to be close with, I have a rabbi that I ask my questions, and you have your rabbi here and a rebbetzin here. If you have questions, ask them. So you'd be surprised sometimes the questions that you ask, you end up finding out that you could do so much more than you thought that you could actually do. Don't underestimate your potential. You are all created with Tselem Elokim. If I had a nickel for everybody who told me, I'll never make it through law school, I'll never make it through college, I'll never have any clients, you think you're going to be a judge? I remember when I was running, one of the politicians at Bar Park called me up. What are you doing? Who told you to run? You think you even have a chance of winning? And I was amazed. Religious people, don't they pray to God? Who are they praying to if not to a God who's Borei Kol Olam, he could do everything. And if he wants me to win, I'm going to win. So you don't know, deep in your heart, if you want to do something, go for it. Because you don't know how great you can be. So I'll end off with the story of Reb Zisha. Reb Zisha from Anapol was the brother of Reb Meilech of Lezhensk back in the 1800s. He was one of the first Hasidic Rebbes. And when he was on his deathbed, he was dying, he was crying. And his Hasidim said, Rebbe, why are you crying? You're a holy man, you're a tzaddik, you're going to go straight up where all the tzaddikim go, what are you crying about? And he said, I'm not crying because I'm afraid that in the Beis Din Shel Mala they're going to ask me, Zisha, why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? And I'm not crying because they're going to ask me, Zisha, why weren't you like David HaMelech? I'm crying because they're going to ask me, Zisha, why weren't you like Zisha? He was afraid that he could have been even better than he was. So all of you sitting here, use every day to the best of its potential. Know that you can accomplish so many great things. And the fact that I'm standing here and I am doing arraignments in Brooklyn Criminal Court just proves that you can all do wonderful things. Hatzlacha to you all.